Step into a realm where the most ancient narratives of Scripture begin to breathe, and the foundational enigmas of our origins are brought into the light. Allow your mind to drift back to an era that precedes time as we measure it, a period before the Garden of Eden, long before humanity drew its first collective breath. In this primordial state, there was no planet beneath our feet, no firmament above, only a vast and profound stillness. Then, out of this silence, a sound, the sons of God. Who exactly were these mysterious figures that bore witness to the very dawn of existence? Why are they spoken of only in hushed tones, their identity concealed within the folds of Holy Writ? If the chronicles are true that Adam was the very first of mankind, then how is it that these beings were already present? Consider the possibility that the creation story you have held onto is merely the outer layer of a reality far more complex, a truth that has been intentionally obscured. Is it conceivable that a different divine hierarchy, a secret Genesis predating Adam, was once established, only to be lost or even systematically erased from history? We now begin a remarkable exploration to untangle this puzzle, one that has been buried under millennia of silence and shrouded in texts deemed too perilous to read. What if these sons of God were integral to a creation that exists outside our entire framework of understanding? What if the answers to questions you didn't even know you had are waiting to be found? Are you prepared to venture into the depths of this sacred enigma? If you are, type Arcane77 in the comments to signal that you are ready to seek the truth. Stay with us, because the revelations that follow are poised to challenge your entire perception of creation. This is more than a history lesson. It is the start of a disclosure that could redefine everything. Let us proceed. The sons of God, a veiled creation, a puzzle before Adam. The Bible does not begin its tale with disorder, but with splendor. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These powerful words reverberate across the ages, establishing a foundation for a universe brimming with design, intention, and awe. Yet, if you peer more intently past the beautiful rhythm of Genesis, you can hear a fainter call emanating from an even older part of the Scripture, a place where the narrative starts before the official beginning. In the book of Job, which many scholars consider the most ancient text in the Bible, God himself asks a question that destabilizes the very ground of our assumptions. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? When the morning stars sang in unison and all the sons of God shouted with joy. Job 38, 4-7. Just let that scene permeate your consciousness for a moment. The planet had not yet been given its shape. The light had not been cleaved from the darkness. Adam had not been sculpted from the soil. And yet they were there, their voices raised in song and triumphant celebration. Who were these beings that witnessed the birth of our world? Have you ever stopped to think about how it was possible for such elation to erupt in the heavens before the first human was even conceived? Who were these sons of God whose cheers resounded before the existence of the world? The original Hebrew refers to them as Benet Elohim. This is not a turn of phrase or a poetic device. It denotes entities of a divine nature. They were not human, nor were they angels as we typically envision them. They were something else entirely. Genesis guides us methodically through the stages of creation, from the empty void to the celestial bodies to the vast oceans. But Job pulls back a secret curtain, offering a brief look into a pre-Adamic existence. Could it be that Genesis is recounting the story of Earth, but not the genesis of all creation? What if an earlier chapter exists, one that has been almost entirely scrubbed from the record? Picture yourself on the precipice of that inaugural moment. No sun, no earth, no human breath. Only the music of the stars and the resounding happiness of celestial beings as they watched God's creative power extend across the void. What would it be like to be in their midst, observing the universe come into being? Could you accept the reality of what was there before humanity? And more importantly, why? Why does Genesis maintain such a profound silence about them? Is it possible that these sons of God were not just observers, but active members of an ancient divine structure, an original kingdom of sentient beings with roles we can scarcely imagine? Certain ancient texts, which were discarded over the centuries as too controversial, speak of them not as folklore, but as the initial creation, a creation that preceded Adam, a creation that either fell from grace or was deliberately hidden. Now we are entering a sacred mystery, a territory the Bible alludes to but never fully illuminates, a domain that only the truly courageous dare to investigate. What if the real beginning did not start with humanity, but with something far older, something timeless, and something God once decided to keep hidden? Within the scrolls of forgotten lore and ancient reverence, there is a text that was once highly regarded by early Jewish traditions, the Book of Enoch. Although it was left out of the contemporary biblical canon, its contents are filled with disclosures that can shake even the most solid theological beliefs. This is not a work of fiction. It is the chronicle of entities known as the Sentinels. These were celestial guardians, originally tasked not with governance, but with observation. However, their actions went far beyond mere watching. They transgressed a boundary established by God Himself. These divine entities, identified as sons of God, came down to the earth. Their initial motive was not rebellion, but a mix of curiosity and purpose. They imparted sacred wisdom to humanity, revealing the secrets of metalcraft, spellcasting, astrology, and the arts of seduction. This was knowledge they had no authority to share. What drove them? Was it empathy, arrogance, or a wish to remake creation according to their own designs? Here we find the first sign of the fall, a fall that began not on earth, but in the heavens. Genesis 6 hints at these beings in a brief and enigmatic passage. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took them as wives. Genesis 6:2. But Enoch provides the complete story of their descent, both in a physical and spiritual sense. They were not rogue outsiders. They were part of a divine structure, an ancient order possessing power, purpose, and a presence that came before Adam. Have you ever stopped to consider what kind of being would forsake heaven to mix with mortals? What could be so alluring that they would face divine retribution? And if they did indeed share forbidden knowledge, what was the hidden cost that humanity had to pay? The punishment that followed was both swift and absolute. The sentinels were confined in darkness, thrown into a prison not of physical rock, but of spiritual chains created by divine judgment. Their story is not merely one of defiance. It is a story of origins, of an ancient splendor that was utterly destroyed. The puzzle does not stop there. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were concealed in desert caves for almost 2,000 years, brought another fragment of this forgotten history to light. These ancient documents describe cosmic turmoil, failed creations, conflicts between the realms of light and darkness, and a war that was not between nations, but between different realities. All of this occurred before a single human had ever been created. Could it be that Adam was not the starting point, but rather the reset? Imagine being taught your whole life that Adam was the first. But what if he was the remedy, a divine restart following the downfall of something much older, much more powerful, and much more perilous? If that is the case, then we need to ask not just why the sons of God fell, but what they were before their fall. What was their original purpose, their initial glory? Because it is possible that what we call creation is not the beginning at all. Perhaps it is a recovery from a monumental spiritual collapse that reshaped the order of heaven and compelled God to start over. This time with dust, breath, and a new type of being. And if that is the case, where does that leave you? A haunting quietness resonates throughout the scriptures, a silence that is as telling as the words themselves. When the sons of God are mentioned in the Bible, they appear without any backstory, family tree, or clarification. One moment, the foundations of the world are being established. The next, they are already present, shouting with joy. Who were they? Where did they originate? And why does the Bible appear to deliberately withhold more information about them? They show up in Job celebrating and in Genesis descending, but their origins are shrouded in mystery. To grasp their identity, we must look beyond a simple reading of the text, beyond chapters and verses, and delve into the ancient crossroads of scripture, mythology, and the esoteric traditions that early religious leaders both respected and dreaded. A common belief among ancient Jewish scholars and early Christian theologians was that these sons of God were angels, but not in the way we think of them today. They were not winged figures playing harps or simple messengers drifting through the sky. They were of a superior order, governors, overseers, princes, beings who were not just in God's presence, but were part of his divine council. Have you ever come across Psalm 82? It offers a startling depiction. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. Psalm 82:1. Who are these gods? Could this refer to the assembly of the sons of God, the celestial court? In the book of Daniel, we see their authority once more, with princes assigned to entire nations, beings responsible not just for carrying messages, but for steering destinies. But if they were angels, why did they not act like them? True angels are messengers, servants who follow every command of the Almighty. And yet, the sons of God, as portrayed in the book of Enoch and alluded to in Genesis, made choices. They did not behave like celestial servants, but as beings with a dangerous level of autonomy. They crossed forbidden lines. They moved from the eternal realm into the fallen one. They shared knowledge. They took wives. They created hybrid beings. They acted with purpose, not with obedience. So now consider this. If these beings possessed free will, authority, and power, were they truly angels? Or were they something more, something closer to rulers than to servants? Could it be that their initial role was not to deliver messages, but to govern creation itself? And if they once held such authority, what did they forfeit when they fell? Imagine being in their position, possessing ancient wisdom, witnessing the formation of worlds, walking the corridors of heaven, and then losing everything due to a single choice, a single transgression, a single dissent. Would you have made a different decision? Or would a blend of curiosity and empathy for the unfolding human story have drawn you downward as well? This is where the mystery becomes more intricate, focusing not just on their actions, but on their motives. And by understanding their fall, we might just unearth a forgotten aspect of our own ascent. As we delve deeper, a second theory comes into view, one that is even more obscure and audacious in its scope. What if the sons of God were not angels at all? What if they were souls, not human and not divine in the conventional sense, but pre-existing sparks of consciousness, primordial echoes of God's essence that existed before the world's foundations were even established? Jewish mysticism, especially the ancient teachings of Kabbalah, refers to such entities. In these profound mysteries, we encounter the concept of souls that were not created from dust, but emanated from divine sources known as Sephirot, which are ripples from the infinite light, the Ein Sof. These souls were not formed within time but before it, composed not of physical matter but of divine substance. Some of these brilliant souls stayed in the higher realms. Others, however, fell. They were exiled. They were dispersed like broken glass, fragments of glory that descended into the fractured vessel of creation. Can you sense the significance of that idea? That before the world was shaped and populated, before even Adam took his first breath, there were already souls observing, choosing, and falling. Does this concept resonate within your spirit? The prophet Jeremiah documented God's words, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Jeremiah 1:5. This verse is frequently cited, but rarely examined closely. Was God simply demonstrating his foreknowledge? Or was he revealing a forgotten reality, that your very essence might have existed long before your physical body did? What if that statement was not a poetic flourish, but a memory? According to certain mystical traditions, Adam was not the initial creation, but the correction, the tikkun, a divine act of repair for a cosmos that had already been damaged. The world as we know it, the human species as we understand it, may have been God's second attempt, not a fresh start but a response to a prior collapse. In this interpretation, the sons of God were not celestial messengers or rebellious angels. They were souls, ancient and luminous. Souls that were once adorned in light are now concealed in flesh or consumed by shadow. Could it be that some of them are still among us today, unaware of their former identity? Could you be one of them? Have you ever felt as though you do not truly belong in this world, as if your soul holds a memory of something your mind cannot access? What if your own existence is a hint that you were once part of something eternal, something that was broken and is now being called to rise again? This theory does more than just explain the sons of God. It completely reshapes the human narrative. It implies that you are not just a physical body striving to become spiritual, but a spirit striving to remember. And in that act of remembering, the veil starts to tear. But not completely, not just yet. To find what was lost before time began, we must venture even deeper. For those who are prepared to look even further into the concealed layers of Scripture, a third theory presents itself, one so daring that it questions the very framework of the Genesis narrative. This is known as the gap theory. Once you understand it, you may never view the first chapter of the Bible in the same light again. Genesis 1:1 proclaims with grandeur, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But the subsequent verse takes an unusual turn, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep." Genesis 1:2. To a casual observer, this seems to flow smoothly, but the original Hebrew beneath the translation suggests a more enigmatic story. The word translated as "was" in this verse here can also be interpreted as "became," implying a change, a transformation, a fall. So ask yourself, what if the earth did not start out as formless and void, but became that way? Could a catastrophic event have taken place between the first and second verses of Genesis? A divine schism that left a once magnificent world in a state of ruin. A world that was judged, obliterated, and covered in cosmic silence. This is not mere conjecture. Traces of this lost world can be found in the myths and legends of ancient civilizations. In the epic stories of Mesopotamia, divine beings are said to have created realms only to see them descend into chaos. The Egyptians also had tales of the Zep Tepi, a divine age that ended in fire and judgment. These narratives, despite being separated by geography and culture, all share a disturbingly similar theme: a first creation that was lost to destruction. Could the sons of God have been the rulers or guardians of that forgotten world? A world that existed before Adam, that was structured, spiritual, and possibly brilliant, but one that fell so far into rebellion or ruin that it had to be completely erased. Imagine a world created in splendor, led by beings of divine intellect. Imagine seeing that world fall apart. If you were one of them, one of the sons of God, would you remember? Would the sorrow of that fall resonate in your very soul? What if the chaos described in Genesis 1:2 is not the start of creation, but the aftermath of divine judgment? This would position Adam not as the first man, but as the first of a new era, a spiritual reboot, a sacred restoration project following an unimaginable collapse. And if that is the case, then what was lost before Adam? Who has any memory of it? And why does Scripture wrap it in silence? Could it be that the very reason God made man from dust instead of light was because something made of light had already fallen? And if you, even at this moment, feel a pull towards mysteries that seem older than time, if your soul is drawn to forgotten realms, peculiar dreams, or unexplainable desires, you have to ask, are you a part of the recovery, or do you possess a memory of what came before? If the sons of God were indeed remnants of a reality that existed before Adam, whether they were high-ranking angels, ancient souls born before time, or divine beings from a world now lost to silence, then their descent was not just an act of defiance. It was a schism, a breach not only of a rule, but of the very fabric of divine law that had maintained creation in perfect equilibrium. The Book of Enoch identifies them explicitly as the Sentinels, beings designated not to get involved, but to observe. They were positioned at the periphery of the human narrative, guardians of order who were never intended to interfere with the timeline. But then something shifted. Was it lust? Was it curiosity? Or could it have been compassion? Did they see a nascent and vulnerable humanity and feel an urge to step in? Whatever the motive, the moment they descended, they did so with full awareness. And they did not arrive empty-handed. They brought with them knowledge, forbidden knowledge, divine technologies that were never intended for mortal use. According to Enoch, these sentinels taught humanity the craft of warfare, how to forge swords and shields, how to achieve dominance through metal and tactics. They disclosed the secrets of metallurgy, enchantments, and the movements of celestial bodies. They taught women the use of cosmetics and men the secrets of roots and herbs, not for medicinal purposes, but for manipulation. And from this, the practice of divination was born. It was a premature enlightenment, a blinding light cast upon minds that were still in the early stages of consciousness. It offered power without integrity, wisdom without reverence, and knowledge without a moral compass. And like a flame in a dry forest, it ignited chaos. Have you ever considered why certain things feel too potent for human control? Why some knowledge, while captivating, seems to come with a price? Perhaps it is because not all wisdom was meant to be discovered in this dimension. Perhaps some entrances were never meant to be opened. The Sefer HaRazim, an ancient Jewish mystical work, details angelic hierarchies that serve as gatekeepers, protecting sacred knowledge that can only be accessed with God's permission. But the Sentinels disregarded that protocol. They circumvented heaven's security measures and gave humanity access to secrets we were not equipped to handle. The outcome was not enlightenment or awakening, but contamination. Mystics have long cautioned that what transpired in that moment was not a gift of advancement. It was the tearing of a divine curtain, a cosmic violation. The gates of heaven, once securely protected by holiness, were thrown open, not by divine will, but by celestial insurrection, and the consequences were felt throughout every level of creation. The equilibrium between heaven and earth was disrupted. What was once harmonious was now vulnerable to corruption. Out of this turmoil arose the Nephilim, hybrids of heaven and earth, born from the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men. But it was not their physical size or strength that instilled fear in the celestial realms. It was what they inherited, because the Nephilim did not just inherit genetic material, they inherited knowledge. Knowledge that could replicate creation, manipulate nature, and subvert order. And with each succeeding generation, that knowledge spread, widening the gap between what was divine and what had become something else. So now you must ask yourself, was the flood an act of mercy or of justice? And more critically, have those gates ever truly been closed, or have they remained ajar, quietly shaping our world to this day? Whispers from the obscure corners of ancient Gnostic texts add a chilling dimension to this story. They propose that the most significant danger was not the rebellion of the sons of God itself, but what that rebellion set in motion. The real threat, they argue, was the empowerment of humanity, not in physical might, but in knowledge, in awareness, in the imitation of the divine. What if the fear was not that humanity would fail, but that we would succeed too quickly? Much like Prometheus in Greek mythology, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind, an act of compassion that resulted in eternal punishment. The sons of God provided humanity with a forbidden flame. A divine spark wrested from the heavens and placed in fragile hands not yet prepared to handle it. And with it came a conflagration not of warmth or light, but of judgment. Kabbalistic tradition interprets this event not just as a sin, but as a cosmic fracture, a violent interruption in the divine flow of creation. They refer to it as the shattering of the vessels or Shevarat ha-Kelim. In this perspective, creation was not a smooth journey from light to life. It was marked by explosions, failures, and a clash between order and chaos. The descent of the sons of God was one such breaking point, where an excess of divine power flooded a world that was unprepared to contain it. Consequently, the divine reaction was not mere anger, it was containment. The sentinels, once brilliant beings of great authority, were imprisoned, cast into the abyss, and bound in darkness. Their names were erased from the heavenly records, like radioactive material sealed deep within the earth. Their influence was suppressed but not eliminated, because knowledge, once disseminated, cannot be taken back. You can bury a document, but its ideas persist. You can confine a being, but not the memory of its power. And so, although the sentinels were imprisoned, the fire they bestowed still smolders, flickering in the darkness, concealed in symbols and waiting to be rediscovered. Have you ever felt an attraction to truths that the world tells you to leave alone? Have you experienced a strange sense of familiarity with ancient myths, symbols, or secrets you have never formally learned? Perhaps it is because that knowledge never truly vanished. Some believe it endured the flood, carved into stone, integrated into oral traditions, and encoded in mythologies that span the globe. Some think it was kept alive by those who still walk among us. Hidden individuals, descendants of ancient wisdom, protectors of a flame too perilous to ignite and too potent to extinguish. And so we are faced with a final, disquieting reality. The rebellion of the sons of God was not simply an act of disobedience. It was a transfer, a handing over of celestial tools into the stream of human history. The question now is not whether it occurred, but what part of it continues to exist within you. The knowledge that the sons of God introduced to the earth spiraled far out of control, if there was ever any control to begin with. What started as forbidden teaching turned into a raging fire of rapid progress. Humanity, once guileless and reliant, was now hurtling forward, directed not by divine providence, but by the influence of beings who had no authority to meddle. And then came the judgment. But it was not merely a penalty. It was a full reset. Scripture documents it with poignant simplicity, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and it grieved him at his heart. Genesis 6, 5-6. These are not the words of a vengeful despot. They are the expressions of a creator lamenting the defilement of something once pristine. But what if there is more to it? What if the Great Flood was not just a divine purification, but also a historical obliteration, a cover-up of cosmic scale, the elimination not only of evil, but of memory itself, of knowledge that could not be allowed to endure? According to the Book of Jubilees, a text once held in high regard by ancient Jewish communities, the corruption of the Sentinels had permeated every aspect of existence. Their influence, spiritual, intellectual, and biological, had saturated the planet. The Nephilim, their giant hybrid descendants, dominated the land, not just with raw power, but with inherited knowledge, technologies, and secrets that fundamentally altered human civilization. What if their ascendancy was not a myth, but a suppressed memory? What if the flood was more than a natural catastrophe? What if it was a cosmic cleansing, a divine effort to scour the earth not just of sin, but of contamination, not just an erasure of life, but an erasure of history, of records, of a legacy? And yet even today, fragments persist. Scattered around the globe are clues that refuse to be forgotten. Megalithic structures that confound modern science, stones too massive to have been moved with ancient technology, aligned with uncanny celestial accuracy. Burial grounds and cave networks, like those in Malta, the verdant hills of Ireland, and the ancient lands of the Americas, are rumored to contain the bones of giants, stories of gods, and whispers of fallen stars. And what of the Hopi, the Sumerians, the ancient cultures whose oral histories speak of a time before our own, of beings from the sky, of overseers, of floods that were sent not to punish, but to conceal? Even in Greek mythology, the parallels are striking. Zeus, the king of the gods, unleashes a flood to annihilate the Titans, the offspring of gods and mortals, children who were too powerful, too untamed, too far removed from the natural order, too similar to the Nephilim for it to be a mere coincidence. So now a single, terrifying question lingers, one that cannot be ignored. What if the flood was not entirely successful? What if it eliminated bodies but not knowledge? What if pieces of the Sentinel's legacy still survive in ruins, in bloodlines, in secrets buried just beneath the surface of what we call history? And more critically, what if some of that legacy is reawakening? But perhaps the most unsettling traces of the sons of God are not interred beneath ancient ruins or secured in forgotten crypts. Perhaps they are concealed in plain sight, in symbols we fail to notice, in rituals passed down through generations, in clandestine societies whose origins fade into the mists of time, from the Freemasons to the Rosicrucians, from ancient mystery schools to contemporary esoteric fraternities. The theme is consistently the same, a veiled preoccupation with ancient knowledge, not the knowledge of humans, but the forbidden wisdom once imparted by those who were never meant to share it. Could it be that the knowledge of the sentinels, the sons of God, was never eradicated, but merely camouflaged, encoded in myth, veiled in allegory, and embedded in sacred geometry and ritualistic language? What if the primary aim of these societies was not innovation, but preservation, acting as guardians of truths too hazardous to be spoken openly? And what if those truths are beginning to stir once more? Look at the world we live in. This is an era where digital light flows through every device, where information travels at the speed of thought, where we access the unseen with a simple touch on a screen. Is this merely a coincidence, or is this the point at which the veil starts to become transparent? Could it be that humanity is once again nearing a threshold, one that the sentinels once breached? Are we repeating the moment when knowledge surpassed wisdom? And now the question that has resonated through every topic we have explored, every puzzle we have examined, comes back to face us again, but this time with greater weight. Was Adam truly the beginning, or was he simply the beginning of a new chapter? And if so, what existed before? And even more unsettling, what lies ahead? The sons of God, once brilliant witnesses to divine creation, did more than just watch. Some became custodians of secrets never intended for humanity. Others became catalysts of chaos, passing down truths that fractured the very structure of heaven's order. And with their fall, the world was irrevocably altered. But here is the disquieting reality. The flood, that immense purification of the earth, did not wipe everything clean. Symbols remained carved in stone, transmitted through rituals, and whispered across generations. Their names, though once forbidden, endured in shadowed mythologies and obscure writings. Some assert that the sentinels were imprisoned. Others contend that they never truly departed. Now take a moment and observe the world around you. We are in an age where stone tablets have evolved into digital code, where sacred energies have become frequencies and algorithms. What was once conveyed through fire and visions is now transmitted through the air, unseen, universal, and unceasing. Could it be that the ancient knowledge once locked away is re-emerging, not through temples and scrolls, but through circuits and screens? Could it be that the same force that once corrupted a civilization is now being presented as progress? If that is the case, then we are no longer just unearthing ancient truths. We are walking directly into their effects, because knowledge never re-emerges without consequence. And once the forbidden is unlocked again, the world cannot stay as it was. So I put this to you, not as a spectator, but as a participant in this unfolding enigma. Do you think the sons of God are still observing us, even now? Could they be concealed among us, gidding, watching, waiting? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what your intuition is telling you. Type Arcane77 if something within you was awakened during this exploration, if a distant memory was stirred, if a new question has taken root, and if you have felt the gravity of these truths settling deep within your soul. Remember to like, subscribe, and activate notifications, because what is yet to come might be even more startling than what has been shared today. They attempted to bury it. They attempted to silence it, but the truth was never lost, only hidden. And now, for those with the eyes to see, it is being brought into the light.